There's broad agreement that we need lots and lots more housing, fast. The government strategy aims to build an average of 33,000 new homes every year until 2030. The target for last year was 24,600. But new data released by the Central Statistics Office today showed nearly 30,000 were actually completed, up 45% on the previous year. It's becoming increasingly clear, though, that the targets are now too low. Indeed, the Housing Commission has warned the government that up to 62,000 new homes may need to be built every year until 2050 to meet demand.
Do you now accept that the targets that you have set in Housing for All are fatally flawed on the basis of the research by the Housing Commission, and that they need to be immediately revised upwards and delivered upon?
Of course we're going to have to go higher than that 33,000 limit. The question is, how do we do it? And the question as well is about the quality of the housing, about housing in the right place. It ain't just a numbers game.
The developments come as a new report pointed to the significant backlog in decisions on planning applications for large new apartment and housing developments that are currently before An Bord Pleanála. The report from consultants Mitchell McDermott found 59% of supposed fast-track strategic housing development projects before the board last year didn't receive a decision, with nearly 29,000 units involved.
We know the board have had its issues, but it's a resource issue. And what we're calling for is more resources to be drafted in, whether from consultants here or from abroad, to fix the backlog.
The government has committed to reforms of the planning system. Today it published legislation to bring those about, which include time limits on decision-making at An Bord Pleanála and restrictions on who can take a judicial review of a decision.
There's no question of restricting anyone's access to justice or having their say. We want a plan-making and a plan-led approach, and people will absolutely still be able to have their say.
But while planning is being reformed, many developments remain unviable due to high construction costs, while the sector's capacity to build what's needed remains too low. And so, as a result, a resolution of the housing crisis still appears a long way from home. Will Goodbody, RTE News.
Well, our political correspondent Micheál Lehane joins us now from Leinster House. Micheál, the government broadly happy with the number of housing units delivered last year, but it's clear massive challenges remain.
Massive challenges indeed. The government pointing to the success of last year, exceeding targets. But equally, the Housing Minister saying today that those very targets now are just base targets. Eamon Ryan, the Transport Minister, going further, saying government will smash housing targets in the period ahead. I suppose that really, in some ways, an admission that perhaps a lot more houses need to be built than is in that Housing for All strategy. But there are challenges around that too, in particular in relation to rising construction costs and planning permissions themselves. Up overall last year, but down significantly when it comes to apartments, down by 67%. And of course, apartments will play a key part in providing more homes for people. In relation to social housing too, the challenge seems even greater. That's because there was a target to build 9,000 social homes last year. It's going to be somewhere above 6,500 in the end. That illustrating the scale of what lies ahead, particularly now the opposition saying that government have a plan, but it's a plan that's failing because it isn't ambitious enough. Documents published this evening on the Department of the Housing and Environment website show that in the latter part of this year there's likely to be a move by local authorities to purchase more derelict properties in town centres. It says particularly on streets that haven't had much public investment, and local authorities would use this primarily for residential homes. On a slightly different note today, another issue that is concerning the opposition and many people up and down the country are those cost of living supports. The Transport Minister giving the clearest hint yet that those excise cuts on petrol and diesel, they are likely to go, he said, as oil prices fall across the world. Well, then the tax base at home will have to be broadened.